Hey everyone, we are back with another update video, and by we, of course, I mean with me as always is Corey. Say hi, Corey.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
And so let's just dive right in. As you could see here, Corey has been working on the art and animations and the slight updated design of the level 2 boss. And we're willing to show you guys a little bit of this because he was already visible in the end sequence of the demo that people were able to play in the Steam Next Fest not too long ago. So here's the final design where you could see Corey added some nice forearm armor.
So that we wanted to add more defensive capabilities on his arms, and he's costume updated for all of the behaviors that he has, which we're not going to tell you and show. So yeah.
And now for an interesting change of pace. Obviously, most of what we've been focusing on is the Megadrive version because that's the version that needs to get done first. But if you recall from the last update video, I had taken the week off to focus mostly on my end. Well, I did a lot of things, but there was making a ton of tickets, constantly playtesting the Megadrive version, and giving Neofid a lot of feedback on exactly what to change, reporting bugs I found, but more importantly, just continually refining gameplay. Make this faster, make this slower, that kind of thing. But on top of doing that, I had finished the design doc for the final boss fight and gave them all of the temporary art they'll need to get that working. But I was also working on all of the illustrations for the 6 collectible cards that will come with the physical versions of the game. And so I made really good progress on those. They're all solidly blocked in now. Some of them are getting pretty cleaned up, maybe 60 to 70% cleaned up. All of them are at least like 30% cleaned up and detailed. But the important thing is the layout, the foundation, it's all there. The design is all there. It's just a matter of me now. Whenever I need to take a break from the more technical side of things in DaemonClaw development, I can just keep loading up those files and cleaning and detailing until I'm happy with them. And the other thing I did is, if you guys recall in the last video, we mentioned that because of the Steam Next Fest, several YouTubers were able to make videos with their kind of first impressions of DaemonClaw. And there was one YouTuber with a very valid criticism. Basically, to explain the complaint he had, is on his big LCD screen, these pixels are very big and very square.
Right.
Very right angular, very sharp. I don't remember his exact terminology because he was speaking French, and while I do understand French, I don't always remember or understand specific terms. But the point is, a long time ago, we had already added some nice features to simulate CRT screens in the modern version of DaemonClaw. But when we migrated from Construct 2 to Construct 3, in every way it was an improvement except for this one thing where in Construct 3, this one plugin we were using was broken and basically it rendered those features no longer working. So we temporarily removed that stuff from the menu. The long story short is, it started at one of those things, I have an idea, I'll test this out. Maybe there's an other way to get these effects working again without needing that plugin. And then, I experimented a little and sure enough, hey, this has potential. And eventually, over the course of the week in between working on the other stuff, mainly the cards, I got it working. So without further ado, let's actually get into it. So you see here on the second screen now, we've got screen modes. So one of the simplest things, of course, is scan lines. And we offer the normal scan lines where basically every other pixel is a little bit darkened. And then small scan lines, which give you a little bit of the CRT flavor without kind of obscuring the visuals as much. But that's just the start of it. And then I'll turn the scan lines back off for now so you can see better what's going on with the blurriness. So if I keep dragging this up, you'll see that we can actually make the pixels quite fuzzy. And I'm assuming no one would want it that fuzzy. That's I took my glasses off fuzzy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you could go just to show that it's working here. You can go pretty far with that. Maybe to something like this is relatively tasteful if you want to really simulate a CRT screen. And then I could turn on these scan lines like so. And then finally, there's even fisheye lens effect. So if you want to really get old school CRT with the curvature of the monitor, Corey and I were talking, we probably want to change the background of this menu screen to not have the built-in exaggerated fake scan lines in the background graphic,
Right, yeah.
because it kind of clashes with and makes it harder to see the effects of the actual effects, CRT effects. But anyway, so you could see we could get that bulging screen kind of effect, and I'll even turn that on a little bit so it's noticeable. And then let's go, and let me turn scan lines back on, and let's get into the game so you can see how that actually looks. So here is full scan line mode, and then I think I prefer the smaller scan line, so I'm going to switch back to that really quickly, actually. There we go. And let's get into
it. I'm always the type that, like, I don't mind a little bit of blur, but scan lines were never too big for me. Like, I didn't use them too often, in emulators or other types of games or whatever.
Yeah, so as you can see, it gets a pretty convincing CRT screen look going. So let's get into some actual gameplay. And it's affecting all screens. As you could see, it's even doing the curvature of the screen, which you could see in the parallax, like of the tree, more easily than anything else. One thing I do need to fix... Oh yeah, the other thing I forgot to mention, which is another automatic partial fix of the issue the guy mentioned where the pixels are big, is we've also... The first thing we did was increase the resolution of the game, the actual screen pixel resolution. So now it's the same height pixel-wise as the Megadrive, but now still full screen. So each pixel on screen is now a little bit smaller. The character's a little smaller on screen. Everything is. So that helped a little bit. And then with these CRT effects, now the PC version is starting to get very distinct from the others, and has, these built-in features for CRT screen fans and for people who don't want big, giant, chunky pixels on their big LCD screens. So that's going well. The other thing you might notice, I started also playing with, Corey and I were discussing how to visually handle the PC version to make it distinct from Mega Drive and Neo Geo. And in general, what we came up with is established this slightly higher resolution, the fact that it's widescreen, and then more general things like keeping it very 16-bit feeling, but kind of like, what would Super Nintendo be like if you could put more sprites on screen, if it was widescreen resolution, that kind of thing? So I've started toying with getting some semi-transparent effects on the screen. And the first one I did was the explosion here. So you'll see when I kill this Birdman, the explosion actually has a glow and fades out and has a layer of smoke behind it that fades out.
Right.
And so, this isn't necessarily the final way the explosion will look, but just starting to play with, nailing exactly how we're going to handle those kind of things. So now we're going to dive into level 4, just to show you another thing I started playing with is the water, if you recall, for the Mega Drive and probably Neo Geo version, because they have no built-in actual semi-transparency with colors like the Mega Drive has, a brighten and darken mode. But if you want something that's actually transparent in specific shades of blue, you're out of luck. So you have to just come up with tricks like dithering, but for cascading water, we found the trick that works the best, which I think I got from one of the Sonic the Hedgehog games. It could have even been the very first one. I always loved how those waterfalls looked. So on the Mega Drive version, maybe Future Mike will splice in footage of the Mega Drive version of DaemonClaw, but it's just vertical lines. So it's skipping every other vertical line or column, you could say, of the artwork for the waterfall so that you could see the character through it. And especially on a CRT monitor, it's pretty convincing. But on the modern PC version, we can go a step further and use one of the exact same semi-transparent effects the Super Nintendo could use, which in this case is additive mode. So there's that, and then I'll make my way to a thicker waterfall to show another thing I started experimenting with, and that's layering up 2 different pieces of art for the waterfall that scroll at different speeds to create more kind of detail and randomization and make the water look a little more realistic. again, as if the Super Nintendo had the abilities it already had, but basically unlimited sprites. And there we go. That's how the thicker waterfall is looking right now. This was just the first attempt. This might not be how it ends up looking when it's finished, but you can see the kind of direction we're going in. So Corey and I, it's a pet peeve of both of us. Some modern pixel art games just throw a ton of like 24-bit alpha blended, very modern semi-translucent effects on the screen.
Yes.
And to hardcore, like actual retro people that grew up with these systems and the Super Nintendo, it's a mismatch. It's kind of jarring of these technologies. Like you're arbitrarily forcing yourself to low resolution and limited color per thing, but then you're loading the screen with a bunch of much later, much higher technology, fuzzy, alpha blended 24-bit effects. And Corey and I agreed from day one that if we add these kind of effects, even on modern versions of our retro style games, that we want to kind of limit those effects to follow the kind of limits that systems like the Super Nintendo had.
Without going into too many details, we have talked about various little ways we can throw these in. I think the magic is the one thing that comes to mind the most that could benefit a lot from it. But we don't want to overdo that. And I think the biggest benefit we'll get with modern PC version is, there can be a lot of extra color palettes and things like that going on. And that's going to probably make a more impactful enhancement.
Exactly. In fact, let Future Mike transition wipe now to ProMotion NG. All right, now that we're in ProMotion NG, which is the pixel art program we use for all of this retro game art development on the Bitbeam Canon side, and you could see here what I've done is I've taken the Megadrive explosion and I've added another layer to add smoke, and then and another layer for when the explosion starts out, kind of a radial glow around the explosion that fades away pretty quickly. And then basically what we could do, just like we'll be able to do with the Neo Geo version of DaemonClaw, is every object that makes sense, like every explosion or piece of fire, it can have its own dedicated 16 color palette. So on the Mega Drive version, obviously we need to share palettes as much as possible because there's only 4 for everything on the screen. Corey worked out a beautiful palette that has, I think it's the same palette for the player is for the explosions as well, if I recall.
We may actually want to try to retrieve the original version that was in Construct for its color palette, maybe to start with, because Mega Drive does get
duller.
There were a few little things I had to do to alter the colors, and it might have even lost a value somewhere there. You know what I mean? So
so like that's the first thing I did was extend the range back up, and I was able to smooth things out a little, get rid of some dithering. And then I added that range of color for the smoke. But the other important thing, so one, increase the color, but keep it within that classic 16-bit limit where almost everything on the screen, whether it be a sprite or a tile, is 16 colors or 15 colors in a clear. And then the other thing is when I'm adding translucent effects, when it's not additive mode, every pixel of everything has to be the same level of opacity. And I'm cheating a little bit with this explosion right now in a sense where if you needed to do this explosion on the Super Nintendo, it would need to be 2 sprites, one on top of each other, because some parts of it are completely opaque. Like in this case, the explosion part is opaque, but the smoke starts to fade away. But the thing is, every pixel of the smoke is the same level of opacity. So that's the limit that we're applying to ourselves to make sure there's not this jarring mismatch of style. Like that idea, okay, if you have smoke, if you have fire, if you're making it fade away, it all needs to fade away to the same degree, or design it in a way where you would be overlapping 2 sprites to get the different levels of opacity. Usually, like I said, in this case, just being some things are opaque and some are fading away. But it's just a nice way to force some limits on yourself that just keep everything looking much more cohesive. So you're adding some 16-bit style transparent effects without going full 24-bit fuzzy, glowy stuff. So that's just some playing I did in between the other stuff when I needed a break from all the other stuff I was working on. But just dipping our toes a little bit into maybe finalizing some of the ideas for these limitations we're going to put on the use of transparencies in the game to make it all really nice and cohesive. Some other really cool progress is that the musician Alistair Brimble that's been making our soundtrack, he has completed every new song except one. There's just one left. So the soundtrack is really close to finished now, and it sounds great and really cohesive. It all sounds very DaemonClaw-y, and I've been adding all of the songs where they belong over the course of the game. So now on the construct version of the game, you can come super close to playing the whole game through. The only thing still not done, because I've been focusing on all this other stuff, is the final boss fight. But you can get through the entire rest of the game, and all of the actual music that is specifically for that segment actually plays at the right time. And obviously it's really starting to feel like a very complete and cohesive gaming experience. And finally, on the Megadrive specific side of things and what Neofid has been working on, level 3 now is fully functional, and it's just a matter of playing and tweaking and playing and tweaking, and that, like, we've already gotten a couple of iterations deep on that, and it's starting. Future Mike will work in a little bit of footage without spoiling anything. That's going really smoothly. So they got the entire level working, including the 2 sub-boss sections, which are very different from each other. And now the magic for the 2 playable characters are as fully functional as currently designed. I'm going to add one more cool thing to Garrett's magic for level 3, which I haven't designed yet. I want to have a scrum with you, Corey, about that, see what kind of cool idea we can come up with. But otherwise, so level 3 is super close to technically finished, but we're going to just keep refining the hell out of that and everything else as we go. And then basically Neofid has got every level. Most of the levels are fully working. The last couple are partly or largely working, and all of the boss fights, half of them are fully working but need refinement and iteration, and the one before last is only partially working. The final boss fight, they haven't started on that one yet, but so they're making good progress, and as they continue to add stuff, I just keep replaying the game as much as possible and getting more and more refined on the gameplay. So not only am I finding and reporting bugs, but just every little thing, like, oh, this will be more fun if this animation plays for longer or shorter, or if this movement speed is, all that stuff. And then the next big thing, aside from them getting in all of the remaining stuff of the game, is we had already had a scrum to figure out what needs to be in the menus. So Neofid just needs to get that working, so it's easy to choose all of the gameplay modes so that they can finish getting all of the gameplay modes working. As we mentioned before, tag team mode is already mostly functional and already quite fun, but the other modes, survival and boss rush mode, those are not functional yet as far as I recall. That's a critical thing, is we need time not just to iterate and perfect the gameplay in general, like how the players move, how the enemies move, and the interaction of them, but we also have difficulty settings that we need to deal with, so we need to thoroughly test and affect to make sure that all of the difficulty settings feel good, feel very distinct from each other, and offer the appropriate amount of increase or decrease in difficulty. And, again, it's one thing to get it working according to the design document, but that's like step 1. You don't end there. It's a bunch of testing and iterating. And then the other thing that could take some time that we need to get started on as soon as we can, which requires the features to at least work to some degree, is perfecting how many points you earn for each thing and how that is affected by difficulty. Because in the meeting that we had with Neofid, we realized we don't want there to be a million different scoreboards, including for each game mode and for each difficulty setting and for which character you control. So there's going to be symbols in the score that represent what character you were playing or what difficulty it was set on. And accordingly, for it to make sense, you're just going to be rewarded more points for things when you're playing in a harder difficulty.
Right.
So yeah, obviously that's going to take a decent amount of testing and balancing to make sure it all makes sense and make sure someone can't beat the game in easy and somehow outscore someone that did just as good a job beating it in hard.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so that's the gist of it. That's what we've all been working on. It's really exciting, like I said, with Corey's beautiful finished art getting in there. Oh, by the way, Corey, this is an update for you too. I'll show you after we're done recording. For the swamp level on the modern version, I finally got the updated map with the hills and stuff in there. Looks beautiful.
Yeah.
So I'll show you that. But yeah, so yeah, we keep hammering away, making as much progress as we can as quickly as possible, but with the goal constantly of just iterating and polishing. And obviously, I won't be focusing much time at all until the Megadrive version is finished. We're going to be highly focused on just finishing everything that's required for that, polishing the hell out of it as much as we can, and getting all the stuff ready for print. So busy, but we're making good progress, and we'll be back in roughly another 2 weeks, I'd say, with another update video. As always, thanks so much everyone for your support, and thanks for watching.
If you enjoy our content and want to keep up to date on our games, please leave a like and subscribe. Also, if you want to support our projects, consider becoming a patron. The link's in the description, and we'll see you soon.